Hey folks, today I want to share a bit about how taking acid has changed me, and not just taking acid recreationally, which I haven't really done. This is more like taking it with a very specific focus, namely to gain more awareness of myself and my psychology and to have deep insights. And I've managed to do that on several occasions. And I think this is a very powerful tool you can use if you really want to have very deep, powerful insights. Psychedelics, I just want to say before we get started, psychedelics aren't just about seeing things, having hallucinations or about having a good time, just having a good time with friends or hanging out, taking some acid, whatever. If you do this with the right intention and in the right setting, they can be very powerful in many different ways. And it's not about getting high and it's not about, escaping. Actually, these more and more psychedelics are being used medically nowadays because we're realizing how powerful they are. So I want to share my experiences to help you understand a bit more what the potential of these psychedelics are, and to also just reduce a bit of the stigma that surrounds them. A quick disclaimer before we start: the information here is strictly educational. I'm not responsible or liable for any damage you cause yourself while using psychedelics. These substances can potentially be very dangerous and even lethal, so if you do use them, please do so carefully and responsibly. Now, let's talk a bit about my trips. So, I've actually not done acid that much compared to some people. I've done, I think it's somewhere between 5 and 8 trips over the course of 4 years. Um, at most one tab, I've never done any more than that one time. And I've always either been at home alone or I've been with someone who's close to me, no more than one other person around me at any one time. So they've been mostly solitary experiences or with someone that I trust. And I think this is one of the reasons, according to all the research I did before embarking on these experiences, this is a very powerful factor if you want to um, have deep insights using acid or other psychedelics as a tool. The insights that I've had and the changes that this has brought have been in areas like spirituality, the self, human psychology, the beauty of life, the ultimate meaning of life, and our potential as human beings. And it's crucial that I tell you right now that these aren't just like mental insights, Often we have insights during the day about how things work, about how life works, especially if we're into these kind of topics. But they're mostly mental, they have some sort of emotional feeling to them as well. And sometimes they can be very powerful and go beyond just, ideas and mental stuff. But often that's the form that they take. With acid, these things they've been way beyond just mental. It's not just me just sitting there thinking about things. It's really fully embodied. It's so clear, it's so potent, it's so stark. It just hits you square in the nose. It's like your world is transformed when this stuff is being revealed to you. And I think it's really important to realize that these things are powerful, and that's why I think using psychedelics as a tool like this, it can show you things that perhaps just regular practices can't show you. I also think it's important just to reiterate, this is not about seeing, animals or fractals or any other sort of hallucinations. When I say, I'm going to use the word seeing because it's kind of a way of saying to realize, to understand, to know. But when I say I see something, I more mean I understand that, I connect with it, it hits me, and it seems very obvious to me. That's what I mean. I don't mean literally seeing, a figure or a person or whatever. So keep that in mind as we're talking here. I also want to say these experiences, which I'm going to describe right now, are very hard to describe actually. As I said, they're very powerful. It's not like reading them in a book. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to read The Power of Now, or I'm going to take some acid and they're going to give me the same, level of insight. I mean, listen, it might, but as I said, usually during the day our insights are very mentally based and they don't really like hit us square on so starkly. Um, Unless you've done psychedelics, unless you've had this depth of insight yourself, it's. I'm not saying this to be patronizing. I'm just saying it because people misunderstand and they misinterpret what I'm saying here without having actually had the experience. You cannot imagine this stuff from the outside. It'd be like me trying to explain what does a banana taste like. I can describe it, and I can point to it, but really, it's not going to even compare because taste is a very subjective experience that we've not really got any good language to describe. And it's the same with these experiences. They are very powerful. They turn you inside out, or at least they can. And any words that I use are just words, and I'm just trying to explain something to you. So let's keep that in mind. My descriptions probably won't do them justice, and I've probably forgotten things. The last time I did acid was actually 2 years ago now. So, and some of the stuff I'm explaining was nearly 10 years ago. So, I've probably forgotten things, but this is kind of the most powerful stuff that I can remember. I'll also say, these are kind of warnings and this and that, but I will say, I wouldn't be who I am without these insights that I've had. And I mean that in a very good sense. They really have changed my life for the better. And yeah, I'm not sure any other method would be so powerful or so shown me so starkly what I was able to see. Now, some of the sort of big picture insights and realizations I've had thanks to acid are a spiritual awareness. So, um, seeing through my identity as this person, as this human being, which is kind of like the core part of all spiritual practice. I've had deep experiences regarding that, and it's spilled over into daily life. And now, although it's not a permanent thing for me, I think I've got access to it quite reliably. Powerful experiences of God. Um, and God, as I'll say later on, God is just a name. Don't get caught up on that name. I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious. I was actually a devout atheist for most of my life until I had experiences with acid and with meditation and so on. And that really, once when you've experienced God so powerfully and so obviously, there's no going back. There has been no going back for me. Realizing the illusoriness of self and of mind to a degree, to an astonishing degree, and that has spilled over into my life definitely, and made me realize just how important my meditation is, and oof, wow, to keep working through this addiction to the self and to the mind and so on. Another sort of big picture view is realizing that life is like a video game in which I'm playing a character. What happens is, as human beings, we learn how to play a character as we, when we're born, and as we grow up, and as we learn to walk and talk and interact with others and draw and write and to recognize things and to make our way around, and to, as we get further than that, to learn things, to study, to get a job, and to, uh, function in the adult world and so on. We learn how to play this character, but we don't realize that it is really just a character. And many people have said this. It's, as I said, these things are easy to say, but seeing the depth of it is, well, I feel grateful that I have. Um, and as a big picture thing, as a big picture insight that I'm bringing into my life, that is one of the things that stuck with me. And I don't have access to the depth of insight I had when taking acid, but it's stayed there in my mind, and I can't, I can't unsee what I saw. Also, the deeper understanding that death is really an illusion, and the simple reason is because life is an illusion. And I'm trying to think of a way to explain that, concisely, but it's hard to explain because any sort of explanation I give relies on life. It relies on using life as a reference, and trying to move outside of that reference to describe why life is an illusion is very challenging. But you can think of life as this video game, as this kind of bubble that has no real permanent reality to it, that you can see the illusoriness of it, you can see the lack of solidity. And this has been part of Buddhism, which is one of the oldest spiritual traditions for, well, thousands of years. So this is nothing new I'm saying, but again, realizing it is quite shocking and life changing. And another big picture insight is realizing that we are all, I am, you am, everyone else is really just a sea of infinite presence. We're not this character. At least we are not only this character, or our identity is not limited to this character. We are really absolutely everything we are experiencing, even our ignorance of that fact, and even everything that we experience that seems to deny that or to veil it or to separate us from everything else is all of us. That is us. And we are just this sea of infinite presence. So, how have these insights, which have come, at various times in my different acid trips, how how has this changed me, my day-to-day self? I think one very tangible way is the physical body. A lot of my acid trips have been very body based, almost like I'm getting a deep massage. Not always pleasant. Like a lot of the times, it feels like demons are being released from my body. I'm saying that metaphorically, so not literally demons, but in a metaphorical sense. A lot of body healing, a lot of sort of like stretching and moving my body around to get out all the knots and the ties and all the the tension and all the holding that I have. That's been a theme, and I think it's like if you get a really deep massage on a regular basis, inevitably that will, uh, or if you do yoga, for example, on a regular basis, that'll affect your body permanently. I think for me, I can feel the difference. When I'm sitting down, I notice I'm not holding lots of tension. When I'm lying in bed, I notice I'm not sitting there like tight, and like trying to force myself to get to sleep, for example. I notice that I don't twist and contort the body as much as other people do. That might be a meditation thing as well, but I think acid has played a big part because it showed me that the best way is to really have the body open and loose so that the tension can release itself. You don't have to tense up around discomfort and tension. That just makes it worse. The best way is to keep the body open and to let it flow through you. And my acid experiences certainly showed me that in so much clarity that I'll never forget it. Ways it has changed me, myself, my identity, realizing what the human self really is. And I said, for me, this is not permanent, but it's established enough that I can see it when I want to see it, to see the illusoriness of it. Basically, I've realized that the human self is no more than a kind of psychophysical contraction. And I've tried to find other ways of explaining this, but it's really kind of difficult. One way to think of it is you have all this experience that you're experiencing right now. You're feeling your body, you're watching this video, you're seeing the visual field, you're hearing things, you have thoughts, you have the feeling of your face, you have the feeling of your body, and you have sense of temperature, you have sense certain emotions going on in your body, even if they're subtle. What happens as a human is over time, because we have to develop this character so that we can function in the world, our experience becomes solidified and grasped around the apparent self that is created by our thoughts and our body and our identification with our experience. And it really is like this. James Fowler calls it the centralized self. It feels like in the center of all your experience, it's usually around here. It's literally usually around the face area. It feels like there is a solid thing that that is who you really are. Um, and this is kind of an implicit assumption. All 7 billion people on the planet, I doubt many of them know this, but this is who most people are identified as, unless they're very young and haven't developed a self yet, or they're very old and are starting to kind of lose their self because of old age, or unless they've done a lot of meditation or other kind of work. That is implicitly who we believe ourselves to be. And this is no more than a contraction, it's an illusion. It's like a wave. It's like the ocean forgetting it's the ocean and thinking it's a wave. Um, and again, I'm trying to point to things that are really hard to explain, but uh, I hope that maybe gets you an insight into what I mean by psychophysical contraction, because it sounds kind of complicated. But that was made clear to me in so starkly, so clearly that uh, well, it's informed my meditation and it's informed everything that I do in my life. Um, and over time, it's becoming a permanent realization. Ways it has changed me: laid back, being more laid back. Um, People have often commented on how laid back I am, and I don't really notice it, but I can maybe compare it to what I used to be like, and that's sort of my reference. I guess I've been shown in very stark terms that life really isn't that serious. At the same time, it is very serious because it is the only thing that exists, but it's only serious in a kind of relative way. What I mean by that is you can only sort of justify the seriousness of life by referring to other things within life. And you can also choose to see life as this kind of video game, um, in which you're just playing this character. So when I notice I'm taking things very seriously, I just remind myself, hey, it is serious, but it's also absolutely unimportant. And I think this does make me very laid back. Not all the time, I'm going to be honest. I have some very petty, hang ups, and I complain about things and I worry about things and I have fears and all this. But overall, I think that has infused me in a very good way with a kind of detachment. Another way it changed me in is my spiritual or religious life. So before, I was basically like a Stephen Hawking fanboy, an Albert Einstein fanboy. I thought that science had kind of nailed it. We'd understood everything. Everything is made of matter and the Big Bang, and everything came into existence. And since then, it's been sort of self organizing. And randomly, we're here and we've got these bodies, and this is kind of what it is. Um, and now I know, un, unmistakably, that God is real. I believe in God, and I don't mean I believe in God as an idea. I believe in God because I've seen it so powerfully that uh, I just can't unsee it. And I'm not talking about the biblical God here. I'm not talking about the great man in the sky or the wrathful God, or I'm not talking about believing in the Bible and all this. I'm talking about the very nature of who we are and of what life is. That is God. If I was to give it a name, like a description, I would call it pure, absolute, undivided being. Now, listen, this just sounds a bit weird if you've never experienced it, so I understand that, but it's possible to experience it. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter how scientific you are, it doesn't matter how logical you are, you cannot logic your way out of God. Um, God is the ultimate principle of absolutely everything. Even all our science and all our explanation and all of this, ultimately everything is God. You cannot escape God. Our ignorance is also God. Our ignorance of God is also God. And listen, you must experience it. Until you've experienced it, it might just sound weird, but you, as I said, you have to experience it. And you're, in a certain way, you're not, to be honest, you're not qualified to say anything unless you've experienced it. If you ever do experience God to any sort of powerful level, your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee that. In my case, on several of my trips, I basically saw the path to enlightenment. I saw the path from ignorance of God to full knowledge of God, or at least what seemed like full knowledge at the time. Seeing how our addiction to our mind and ourself and our self contraction is one of the huge obstacles to knowing God. And well, that's that's informed my spiritual life, and it's involved, informed how I see absolutely everything, uh, in a way that is uh, is permanent, and I can't see it. You know, I can't see myself going back to my previous ignorance and arrogance. You know, my anti-religious arrogance. I can never go back to that. And I think the other big way that acid has changed me is connecting with my life purpose. I've never actually heard of anyone else talking about this. Um, Perhaps only a few times. But for me, on at least two of my trips, I it seemed very clear to me that I was connecting with who I was going to be in, 5, 10, 15, 20 years at the time. Um, like it literally felt like I was that person that I was destined to become. And I saw it and I saw the path to it and I saw what I had to do. And for me, at that time in my life, when I was sort of doing these trips, sort of 4 or 5 year period, I really needed it, because I'd lost my purpose in life, um, and I had inklings of a higher purpose, but I was too scared to chase after it, and I was too scared to really believe it. But seeing it with such clarity and really feeling that that was who I was destined to become, has it's probably one of the main reasons that I am that person now. You know, the website and the YouTube channel and everything else that I do, that is all exactly what I envisioned when I was tripping on acid. Um, for me, this it was like I saw myself as a kind of spiritual leader, talking about these topics, guiding other people, and I felt this enormous sense of power, but power to serve and power to educate and to help, not power to dominate the world and to become like, some despotic leader, but to be a spiritual leader, to be a visionary. And to me, psychedelics wiped away the fear of it and took me to the pure vision. And that has stuck with me ever since. And when I'm feeling lost and scared and disconnected from my purpose, I remember that. And I remember that that is who I was destined to become. And I connect with that belief in it and that trust in what I saw. So I think I've shared the main ways that acid has changed me. I'm not going to say this is an absolute complete list, but I don't want this episode to go on for hours and hours. overall, psychedelics and even weed, I've had similar things with weed actually, um, which it's been a while since I smoked, but I've had experiences like that. Can They're not a substitute for working on yourself, doing meditation, working on your psychology in everyday life, but they can give you powerful glimpses of the deepest realities that you can know as a human being. Um, the transformation, in a way, is temporary, but the experiences are so powerful that they stay with you. It's like, imagine the best moments you've ever had in your life. Okay, they were temporary, the intensity was temporary, but there's something there that has stayed with you. The memory, the it's had some kind of lasting effect, and I think the same happens with psychedelics. And they show you a bigger reality. They show you a trajectory for yourself. They show you what is coming next for you. And for me, it showed me the full actualization of the work that I was doing at the time in different areas of my life. And they acted as a real encouragement for me to keep going, whether it's spiritual or to do with work or to do with, life purpose or to do with projects, anything else. Um, just a very powerful tool. I would recommend a lot of research and be very careful with these things. Um, Try to avoid doing them out of desperation, out of trying to get a quick fix. These things are powerful. They're going to show you things. They're not just going to show you the positive side, they're going to show you some dark shit as well. So please be careful. Listen to the disclaimer at the start and give them the respect they deserve. But if you do it safely and correctly, they are very powerful. So I think that's all I want to share. Thanks for joining me for this report, and I'll see you again very, very soon for more.